everyone, and welcome to Beauty and the Biz, where we talk about the business and marketing side of plastic surgery. I'm your host, Catherine Maley, author of Your Aesthetic Practice, What Your Patients Are Saying, as well as consultant to plastic surgeons to get them more patients and more profits. So today's guest is Dr. Stephen Camp. Now, he's a board-certified plastic and reconstructive surgeon in private practice in Fort Worth, Texas. Now, he received his medical degree from the School of Medicine at Texas Tech University. He did his general surgical residency at Carolinas Medical Center, his plastic surgery residency at the University of Utah, and he did a fellowship with somebody I know well, Dr. Daniel Mills, out in California, who is the past president of ASAPS, which is now known as the Aesthetic Society. Now, Dr. Camp serves on several Aesthetic Society committees. He's a nationally recognized speaker for Cyton Laser Company, a member of the Real Self Ad Board, and a member of the Advisory Board for Allergan Medical Aesthetics. So, Dr. Camp, welcome to Beauty and the Biz.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Catherine.
Sure. And I know Austin, Texas, but I don't know Fort Worth. What are you close to?
So, we're really close to Dallas, which is kind of how people know the airport, Dallas-Fort Worth. And so we're about 30 miles, 40 miles west of Dallas. And just about the same amount north from Austin. So we're very much north central portion of the state of Texas. And, American Airlines actually headquartered in Fort Worth. So, that's kind of where we are. So you just can draw a big bubble around the Dallas-Fort Worth airport, and we're within that sphere.
Gotcha. Actually, I used to be a frequent flyer of American, so I know that Dallas airport very well. But I haven't traveled much at all since, for a while, like everybody else. So let's hear your journey, because I believe you started off in Chicago, and then you bounced all over the U.S. with your studies and your training, and then you ended up in Fort Worth, Texas. How did that happen?
Yeah, so I was born in Chicago, and my dad worked for Sears, which was, headquartered in Chicago for many years. And he worked in a field where he had to do a lot of international work. And so he spoke Spanish well and did a lot of business with Sears and companies trying to expand into Latin America and in Mexico. He ended up meeting my mother, who was working for a Spanish consulate at one of these offices when he was on a business trip in New York. And so that romance sparked just via work. And my mom is Colombian, so I'm actually half Colombian by background. And she and my dad started off, their life in Chicago. That's where I was born. And we lived there till I was a young boy, but ultimately moved down to Texas. And for the most part, I grew up in San Antonio.
Gotcha.
And did college and undergrad in the state of Texas, just like a good old Texas boy. And then once I started matching into surgical residencies, I was fortunate to match into the hospitals I really liked where I interviewed. And so for general surgery, I really fell in love with North Carolina. And that's where I met my wife, Sarah. And then from there, we headed west to Utah. And then we spent time, obviously, with my old boss, Dr. Mills, in Laguna Beach, which was a wonderful experience. And when that was all done, we decided to come back to Texas. So we actually live about 3 streets over from my wife's parents. And,
oh, nice.
So that's kind of what brought us all the way back around here, full circle. So that's kind of the route. And so we just went one step at a time. It wasn't anything specific or planned, and it all worked out great.
And did you go straight into private practice after fellowship, or how did you set up shop?
I did. I when I left fellowship, I actually joined a private practice that was already existing with 2 other plastic surgeons. So we had a small plastic surgery group of 3 surgeons, and I did that for about 4.5 years. And as I started kind of to cultivate my areas of interest in plastic surgery, I became more focused on the aesthetic side of surgical treatments, especially body contouring and breast surgery, and decided I wanted to kind of create my own independent practice to cater to those patient needs maybe a little bit better. And so about 5 years ago, I went independent, and my wife and I started that practice ourselves with one other clinical nurse. And so it was a solid, beefy team of 3 people. And we've grown it from there over the last 5 years. And so we stayed very committed and dedicated to aesthetics, which at first was a scary leap, but it just matched our interest. And what we wanted to be able to do was focus and really give the attention to those patients so that we could deliver not only excellent surgical quality, but kind of attentive pre and post-operative care in a way that hospital settings and emergency call can be interruptive to. And so that's what we've done, and been just really happy with it.
Right. I just, in today's world with the insurance the way it is, I just don't see how you can juggle both very well. I think you can do it. It's just not very well because the insurance side will take up all of your focus and time and effort. It's demanding as heck. And then the cosmetic kind of fits in where it can, and very difficult to toggle between the two.
I think you're exactly right. And I think, in that situation, it is very helpful to kind of be able to have a focus within your practice so that you understand the procedures that you're doing and what those needs are. And then also the business side of it, which quite frankly, no one learns well in training. So we learn the process of evaluating patients, diagnosing and treating them, and then caring for them, not only during their acute surgical phase, but well after that. And that really is the scope of what we learn. And then after that, it's just kind of expected that you would be doing enough to kind of take care of employees and pay an office building and cover a lot of business expenses that aren't seen, especially when you're an employee at a university hospital. So private practice is a totally different animal, and it was all very much on-job training. And I think that, as you know, I think that's probably a common refrain amongst many of us in our space, both plastic surgeons, dermatology, and other people that are committed to aesthetics. It really is the practice of taking care of your patients, but then it's also an entire business to run as well. And both are full-time jobs, and they can be a lot of fun, but there's certainly a lot to learn. I tell my wife that we just became accidental entrepreneurs because we had to figure out what we wanted to do with the scope and the scale of the business. And we're still learning that. And so I learned this from one of my surgical teachers in residency and said, one of the great things is that, if you're paying attention, every day is a school day. There's always something to learn. And that's true.
And you'll really learn about yourself. You really learn, like, do you have any interest at all in running a business? Are you okay with accounting or talking with the legal people? Or, there's so much more to it than you realize when you get into it. But frankly, most people wouldn't even get into running their own businesses if they knew what went into it. So probably naivety is your friend at that point. So when I love to hear how you started the private practice. Did you rent space? Did you go all out and build a building? What did you do?
Yeah, so I was in an interesting situation where I had joined an established practice and had an office and other patterns of managing flow of patients and clinic space already established, and then I had to uproot that and start all over again. And so that started with trying to find a space. And in the window of time between my decision to leave the group practice I was with and start my own practice, I had to figure out what that would look like in terms of an office setting, and where my patients would be seen, and where I would do surgical procedures, and how I would manage all different kinds of things, including the accounting and the legal entity incorporation. And of course, there was a huge loan. And so it was overwhelming. But I think one of the things is that there was a vision about what we wanted to have our practice look like. And so we went back to square one, and then, I just said, we got to focus on one thing at a time and just treat them like dominoes. And so using that, my wife and I talked, and we met with other people that were in the business world that had nothing to do with plastic surgery and banking and accounting, and said, well, what does it take? We asked people, what does it take to open a restaurant? What does it take to open a hotel? My wife's family was involved in publishing, and we asked, what do people do in the publishing industry and in newspapers? And so there was a lot that we gleaned from how do you want to write a business plan? And so I would say that the first thing you have to have in mind is what is it that you do that's great, or an individual or unique skill? And then talk about how you do that, because a lot of people don't know how somebody makes sushi, or what's involved in creating a hotel space or a car dealership, right? And so, but people who do that in their industries, and people like us in aesthetic surgery, understand our services. And so we wrote that stuff down, and we created a blueprint and a flow for these are our skills, and then how are we going to deliver them? And then we created a patient flow, and then we created a volume, and we assigned a volume to that patient flow, and that built a projected revenue cycle. And so, like I said, I didn't know any of this by residency or by training. And some of it I gleaned from different areas and books. One book I would be completely remiss if I didn't mention by name was a book called Traction by Gino Wickman. And a lot of people that start off on this pathway, I think, run into that book at some point. And it talks about how to think about your business, and it talks about how to build around that and put the right people in the right seats. And so that was something that was new and foreign to me. We rolled all that stuff up into a business plan, and then asked people what we would need. And I took as much as they would give me. And then with that, I tried to spend as little as I could out of the gate. And that was very, very challenging because there is that uphill climb where you're being busy, you're doing things, and the bills have gone out, but accounts receivable haven't come back in. And it all ends up being okay, but you don't know it's going to be okay until that happens. And so you feel a little bit like you're Sisyphus rolling a ball up a hill, and you're getting close up to it. And then every day at the end of the day, the ball rolls all the way back down to the bottom again. So those are the things I think that we learned. And I think that what we figured out is that there's all these different categories, and we had to learn what the categories are, and we had to learn how to be more organized. And then we had to learn where we were going to spend our time, what skills we had and what skills we didn't have. And so that helped us hire a phone person, and helped us focus on a clinical nurse. And then as volume grew, we needed people that could coordinate with our surgery planning, the calendar, the patients, and collections. And so all of a sudden, 3 people grew to 5, and then to 7, then to 9, and then to 11 as the volume of work expanded in that direction. And so I think the first thing was understanding our business, and then understanding, a value assignment to things that we did. And then from that, just being logical and saying, here's what we think we can generate. When you start off out of residency, that's very difficult, and you just have to kind of assume and try and understand market values in your geographical territory. in my case, at least I had the benefit of 4 years of practice, albeit not on my own, but at least an understanding of, on an average, month and quarter and then year, what I could do in terms of volume of cases. And so that was particularly helpful.
Were you going to stay in reconstructive when you went out on your own? Were you still going to do recon and dabble in cosmetic, or did you jump and just go, that's it, I'm doing cosmetic now?
I think that when I first started, I had a very broad practice, everything from facial trauma and injuries and burns to breast cancer and facial cancer and tumor reconstruction, with a mixture of some cosmetic surgery.
How did that work out?
And it worked great, and for the most part, I made myself available and tried to take care of, like I said, one domino at a time. And I'm probably going to sound fairly repetitive because I think that's probably the thing I learned the most is that you can only do what's in front of you. Your mind will tend to wander, and the better you can focus, the more efficient you can be, and the more you can actually do, and more of that at a high level. So that's kind of what I did. And then eventually breast cancer reconstruction became a steady stream of referral to me. I developed some relationships. And so when I spent the first 2-3 years of my practice, I narrowed things down from everything to basically breast cancer and cosmetic surgery. And then as time went on, there was kind of a decision to make because both required a significant amount of time and demands, and the patients, I think, deserved quality, undivided attention. And ultimately made the decision that our volume and capacity for growth and ability to manage life and a schedule was better in the aesthetic arena. And so we chose that and committed to that hardcore about 3 years ago. So I think it was a gradual process. So there was, certainly an intersection of that being my interest. I did plastic surgery residency like everyone that does plastic surgery. But then in addition to that, I did an aesthetics dedicated fellowship to further hone certain specific skills and take on a few little extras, if you will, both surgically and non-surgically. And I feel like that made a difference for me early in my practice, allowed me to fast track high quality results to my patients. And then that became, understood and passed around via word of mouth. And so there was my interest. And then also there's just what ends up happening. So there's parts passion and parts your practice picks you as well. So, and I think I could have fallen into other things such as breast reconstruction, but it just so happened that this is the way it worked out. And I've never looked back. I've been really happy with it.
So when you went out on your own and you were still doing recon, were you doing it at hospitals, at a surgery center, or at that point had you built your own OR?
No, and I'm still in that world. I definitely used hospital-based facilities and hospital-owned surgical centers. And there's certain cases in the immediate cancer setting and some of the larger tumor type cases that were in the hospital. And then there was different stages of care that were in outpatient surgical centers. And so it was possible to blend both early on at first, but then it became more and more difficult. And now 100% of the things I do is for the most part, surgical center based. They're all hospital owned surgical centers. But that's the nature of it. And generally speaking, outpatient surgery. In that process, there's shared facilities, shared overhead, and that's nice. And it's also reduced risk. But I also think that there's less ability to control the environment.
Right.
And in particular with scheduling and discretion and to a certain extent, kind of clarity on instrumentation and personnel that might shuffle between different surgical services, whether it be orthopedics, plastic surgery, or general surgery. So it became clear to me that I really wanted a very focused, dedicated team with, quieter, more discreet pre and post-operative areas, low traffic, and easy access. And when you go to a place that might have 10, 14, 15 operating rooms, there's many different patients there. And so it became clear to me that if I could control that, it would provide unique value and elevate the experience for patients. And so that started the pathway that my wife and I had of, well, it doesn't really exist, and we don't know that anyone's going to cater to these specific needs because we are just one surgeon out of 20. So I think we need to do it ourselves. And I think, like all good business questions, you start with a good question, and the answer on what to do is always it depends. And I think for us, it depended on what we wanted to do more than what was, quote unquote, the best thing to do or the smartest thing to do. Certainly there's, I think, some degree of risk that we're taking on. And certainly we're starting over that process, just like we did with opening our own practice with a business plan and new financial arrangements. And then add on top of that, the real estate side of life and the kind of quality assurances and inspections that go into normal office building versus surgical suites. And then there's a whole set of rules and templates that go onto that there. But I think our experience with our private practice gave us, I think, enough courage to say that we're going to do this because it's what we want to do. And so, I think there's a great saying, if there's not necessarily that job out there that exists that's perfect for you. So if, you want to have the job that you dreamt about, create it. And I think that's very much entrepreneurial 101. And
so what did you do? Did you buy a building and build it out? What did you do?
We bought land. And so we bought an empty plot of land. I can actually see it from the office I'm in right now because it's adjacent to the medical office building that I'm in. And so we looked around town and trying to find a place that would work, that would still be centrally located to where our current patient base was, where our life was. And we happened to find one right next to the building that I'm in. And so we went through the real estate process and built on to what was now, an accounting team and a legal team that we'd had experience with starting our practice, and added a real estate team. And then with that team, they gave us guidance on architects and builders. And we interviewed, 4 or 5 different construction groups and several different architects, and whittled that down from 4 or 5 to 2, and then ultimately partnered with a development company that's been instrumental in a lot of project planning and oversight. And I think that's the key takeaway. You can't write it all down in a booklet or organize a timeline in a calendar and get every single thing in terms of regulation, accounting, legal, building, and organize it on your own. But you need to know that you're not going to know everything. And then you need to know that you can't be everywhere. And so learning how to expand and to delegate is based on effort, due diligence, but then ultimately that leads to trust. And you have to trust certain components and allow that to happen. And if people are passionate about what they do, there's a goal, there's a vision attached to what you're doing. Then you can start setting guideposts for yourself, goals, if you will, and tackle those again, same way, one domino at a time. So we happened to find our property and get going on our construction. And then there was this thing called COVID. And so, it's added timeline and some delays and stress. I mean, I think that for our practice, we definitely were sidelined, I would say, for a good 3 months just in our current office. And so all of that translated into other downstream effects with our build project, which has been about a 3-year process.
Oh, wow. So what's the ETA on the new building?
They tell me August 26th.
This August?
Yeah, 24 days.
Oh my gosh, that explains, because I was thinking, I saw on Instagram you were looking for surgical staff, and I'm thinking
we're hiring, and I think that dovetails nicely into a lot of different things. It's like, I'll have people in our space, some younger years and experience and more, but trying to tackle the same ideas. Who do you hire and when? And do you want to build your own surgical center? And what does that look like? And I don't think that there's any specific one way, but we're trying to slowly build out a team and do that. So we're adding clinical personnel that includes recovery room nurses. We've partnered with an anesthesia group that's going to help us with that anesthesia core that we'll need for our surgical center. And it'll be 2 operating rooms. And so ideally, we'll invite other surgeons in the community that need access and are committed to that same idea of, high quality, high convenience. I think it's going to be great because I feel like a lot of people that are in the plastic surgery world feel the same way. They want an area that feels like it's focused to procedures that aren't every day for other surgical centers, whether it be a facelift or whether it be, complex liposuction with fat transfer. So sometimes the equipment needs, they're just slightly different. And then the room setup can be monitored so it's more comfortable for both patient and surgeon. And I think that when you borrow places that are designed for 98% of the other surgery that goes on in this world, that's what you run into. You run into certain things that create access restrictions that just limit efficiency. You always can work around them. There's never anything different. And that's the way it's always been. But I think that's been the most energizing part, is to feel like we're going to have that level of control all the way from entry to exit and the patient experience. And when you turn that over to any kind of third party, it's nice that someone else takes care of it and it's off your plate, but it's also frustrating when you can't control exit and arrival and departure times and discretion, maybe to the level that you want to.
What I hear over and over again from surgeons is it was a pain in the neck to develop the darn thing. The thing that saved them was having a killer nurse or somebody who really knew that surgical world to run that thing like a military operation. That was very helpful. And it was not the profit center that they thought it was going to be. However, the convenience and the efficiency of it was priceless. That's what I hear.
Yeah. And, I think I've heard exactly the same thing. And to be honest, I don't know that it will be profitable or even cost money. I think that for most people, they say it's a break even,
right?
And it creates enhanced convenience. And, the response I would have to that is that if you're not spending any extra, overhead that you're not returning back to yourself, but you're becoming more efficient, then you're just enabling yourself to do more volume of cases and capitalize off things in that way. So when you take all of the moving parts, like you said, you need a very highly skilled, motivated, independent leader of those surgery centers. And I feel like we've really found one that's great. So I'm excited about that. And that was actually our first most important hire for the new surgery center, is an OR director. And they're taking a very lead role in interviewing recovery room nurses, circulators. And so it's become a very team effort And it allows us to do a lot of different things, and we're allowing ourselves to have access to interview nurses and different people while I'm operating somewhere else. And then we can all convene. And with the interruption of COVID, we've all kind of learned how to Zoom and do other things. So we can really catch up and do a lot of things kind of in parallel that we didn't used to do because they just weren't traditional business practice, at least not for us. And so we've kind of borrowed some of those simple survival tactics and business hacks from COVID and tried to integrate that into this. And then I think, the thing that we learned early on is we couldn't do all of our own accounting. We certainly didn't know the law, the legal ins and outs of what's required for different things. And so we learned, how to find people that we thought we could trust and delegate appropriately. And, it's never perfect, but I think it's the only way to go. And I think that it is impossible. You are rolling that ball up the hill by yourself if you do it by yourself. And then you have to figure out how to build a team.
Would you say that's your biggest challenge, just staff and trying to build team building? Would you say that's your biggest challenge?
It is.
Any tips on that one?
Yes. I think number one is mostly patience with yourself. Because there's all these moments where you lean back on things that you did and you go, okay, I want to do this differently. And then you try something differently and it creates a different set of new challenges that you hadn't anticipated because you just didn't know. And so number one is to be patient. And then I think the second thing is to try and understand how all this stuff works. And I came across this as well in my trying to learn about business, and what made people successful is people talk about finding the right situation, or I need to find my right job in life, or I need to find my right partners or my coworkers. And I think it's really about development versus discovery, right? So people feel like they're separated from their perfect life, their perfect house, their perfect job, maybe their perfect relationship, whatever the case may be. And they spend a lot of time talking about what's not right. Maybe, their coworkers are not buying into the culture. And so very rarely do people lead with, this is where I need to develop myself. And so it begins with self-development. And then I translate that into what we want to do in our office. And we have people that have been with us for the entire time that I started from my own practice, where they started as front desk, and now one of them is one of my two co-patient coordinators.
Oh.
And so her skills evolved in their time with us because she sought it out and we allowed it. And I've been in places where people hang on to the idea that someone's good at front desk. We have that. We don't want to disrupt that. So let's not rock the boat. Problem with that is that it creates the potential for any employee and the leader to get stagnant. And so if you're always a level of development, you're trying to move them along to phases where you're moving on to you're the boss and they work for you. And the relationship is based on permission and hierarchy. And then as time goes on, you can get to know what that person's strengths are, what their interests are. We had another person that was in our front office and told us after a year that she loved skincare and wanted to go to esthetician school and didn't know how to do it. So we worked out a way to send her to esthetician school.
Nice.
And that cut her hours away from being a full-time employee. And then we had to figure out how to hire a second phone person and how she would cover her tuition, because she wanted to do it desperately, but financially needed resource assistance. And so she could have stayed working in front desk, and we could have stayed isolated in a relationship defined by permission, I'm the boss. She gets a paycheck from me. But the relationships, both with my patient coordinator and now my new esthetician, are ones I didn't have when I started 4 years ago. And they're valuable employees with loyalty, and they're people that I know well beyond a technical skill. And hopefully they know that about me as well. And so that ability to develop each other, I think, is what I've learned. And I've tried to use that as the fulcrum for how I'm going to be able to move forward. I don't know what the next 2 years holds exactly. I don't know what 7 years from now looks like exactly, but I do know that I'll need to kind of continue to enhance and develop my own skills as a leader, as a physician, as a surgeon. And that, when things get a little bit stressful, tap into that resource of how am I developing myself within the office? And are there talents in the office that I'm not tuned into or paying attention to? And I think that would be maybe the biggest learning that I've had. So it's nearly 10 years of post-residency life now for me. And I think it is incredibly simple, but for some reason I never distilled it into the idea of development versus looking for the right position.
You already said it earlier, you create it.
That's right.
It takes so much maturity to get to that point, because when you're younger, you're looking at the external world saying, so what do you have for me? And you're looking around, so where's the answer? And you realize, oh, I get it. I have a vision in my head, and I go out and make it happen.
Right.
There's nothing simple about that, but it's all about creating, not finding. Gosh. Yeah. It's a big deal. So it sounds like, I was going to ask you what your plans are to expand, but it sounds like you don't want to bring in a partner. You rather just bring in the outside surgeons to do some surgery in your surgical location. Is that the point?
Yeah. And, I think I love the idea of having a partner. And I think that I'm still trying to figure out what my business looks like for me, much less try and tell somebody else that they're going to join some situation that's going to be great and perfect for them. So to kind of answer that question, I do have somebody that's going to come and share the office building I'm going to be in. And we evaluated that concept of a formal partnership and having him join the practice. And the difficulty in evaluating their independent desires for clinic and available office space and phone personnel versus their salary demands and overhead requirements everywhere else became a blocking point. Yeah. And I'm sensitive to that because in many ways, I lived through that myself as a young surgeon leaving training, joining an established practice, which I was very fortunate to learn from. And it helped me understand a lot of different concepts about the overhead that another person brings into the office. And so our discussions led to a mismatch in where certain overhead needs would be relative from my point of view and that person's point of view. And so we just agreed to work together. And so we're going to not, worry about losing patients via a website lead or a phone inquiry because of whose staff is there that day or things of that nature. But at the same token, we're going to work together to build the infrastructure. The experience for patients is very much unified and the same, but the bank accounts are separate. And if he wants to take 6 weeks of vacation and I want to take 8, that's okay. And it doesn't impact either one of us. Yeah, and so he's going to have his own. He's going to have his own independent practice and website and employees. But at the same token, it's something that I envision being a long and lasting working relationship. And ultimately, we want the building, the practice, and the infrastructure to grow in its value. And I think that that allows for people to partner together in something that has a value to it that is asset assigned. And I think that there's a lot of difficulty in defining what a medical practice or an aesthetic surgical practice is worth when you just take a revenue norm.
Right.
Because the same procedure may have different fees charged and different abilities and volumes on an annual basis from one surgeon to the next. And not necessarily is a discerning mark on quality, but it just makes the potential for there to be a mismatch on what one revenue's assigned purchase value is may not mean the same thing in another person's real world experience.
And you're
so
so
you
much
either
better
overpay or underpay.
But learning that now versus getting into a partnership and getting all legal and then finding that out, you're so much better off now. Just, you already have figured it out. Like, you know what? We're going to run our own thing. You know, everyone's going to run their own thing. We're going to share resources and we'll leave it at that. I think that's a brilliant idea, quite frankly. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that it takes a while to figure out what you want your own rhythm to be.
Right.
And I think there are people that I know, great friends, that are in groups of 4 or 5 or even 6 plastic surgeons, and it matches everybody's ethos. And everybody's okay with that structure, and that works. But for a lot of us, I would say probably 90% of us, we have a very independent mindset about what we want. And sometimes what we're doing for 3 or 4 years can change. And so having that flexibility is very important, and not feeling either beholden to a certain financial restraint or held back because of, being ultra conservative or risk averse is also important. So having that freedom is very important. And I think it keeps people happy. And I think you can figure that out. You don't have to figure that out by hiring a partner and a young associate out of the gate. I think that's certainly an option. And that's how I came in. And I would say that the more clearly defined you can make that on-ramp, the better it is for all parties involved. So there's not the potential for scorekeeping and wondering if somebody should be in a better situation, either via time, via financial resources, or freedom to pursue their creative interests because of a built-in practice restraint. So it is highly complicated, but I think that either one can work. But when I met my current associate, it was clear to me that the ability to control certain aspects of his office and patient flow, just like it is to me, was very important. Right. And so within that, we're giving each other space to explore that, do it in the environment that best suits us and then ultimately our patients. So I think that will lead to the best relationship in that way. And we'll see where this takes us, and maybe more people will come. I mean, so Fort Worth's not far from one of the largest airports in the world. A lot of people move here every year.
Yeah, from California, where I'm at.
A lot of Californians are coming, and so there will be more people come in and more opportunity, and we might find that we had so much fun doing this that we want to do it again in a few years, but we'll see.
Yeah. So I know your wife is very active in your practice. Any tips on that? Because I've seen it go all sorts of different ways. How does that work out in your practice?
Mostly great, because she is the better half. But I would say that you have to understand what's that relationship like. And for my wife and for me, it gives us energy to think about work together. And that's not always the case. I know that there's a lot of couples I know in plastic surgery or other professions in life where when work's over, they want to unplug and talk about something else, whether it's outdoors, whether it's art, whether it's sports, and they want to compartmentalize in that way. And I think if that is inherently the situation, it does create a little bit of oil and water friction that doesn't need to be there, that makes it hard to want to stay committed to the work project. And then at the same time, it also, contaminates the out of work environment. And so I think that's the counsel is just to try and figure out your personality. And for my wife and I, we started off thinking we would never want to work together. Her background was in cardiac surgery. We met when I did general surgery training. And then ultimately, she stayed in the cardiac surgery world until I decided I needed to go on my own. And I needed a nurse. And she was willing to take my best offer. And so it became, something we identified via necessity. We didn't know it. And so 5 years later, it's still this. And she became very, very hungry and passionate about things like the accounting side of things. She became a student of marketing.
Nice.
She became very intrigued with the concept of social media and a website build. And for a lot of days after a long day in the operating room, those tasks are a drag. And when I get to go home and think about them with my best friend, and sometimes over a glass of wine, it expands our creative juices. It expands our work hour potential. And for us, it makes us feel connected. So even though we work in the same office, there'd be 8 to 10 hours where I'm in the operating room and she's somewhere else. And so it allows us to, it's essentially our baby. We get to work on the same thing together. And it's the thing we both have to do out of work necessity. And within that, we found a new commonality, a new layer of depth to our relationship that wasn't there before we started working together. And so that's why it works for us. When it's another layer that adds depth to what you're doing, then you can work with your spouse. When it creates conflict, then you have to be aware of why that is. And it doesn't mean you can't work together at all. It just means you might have to be aware of what capacity creates the trouble.
I have found that it's really important to have boundaries with each other.
Yeah.
Like, you do the surgery, she does the marketing, you do what you do well, she does what she does well. I have found that seems to be the easiest way to go about that. But it's also helpful not to have that kind of wife that pops in her yoga outfit and says hi to the staff and how's it going and what are you guys doing, and then leaves again. That causes a lot of havoc often in practices, because then the wife is this part-time fluttering around kind of thing, and your wife looks very intelligent and committed. And yeah. I think she's doing it the right way. Just if you wanted my 2 cents.
Well, that's definitely, anyone who knows me well knows that's the secret to any success we have. I think I'm pretty good at being a worker bee. Yeah. But definitely there's a whole world outside of this. And I think when people try and do it alone, that's a huge problem. And then obviously, how do you find the right ways to build people? I was lucky that my wife was kind of there and built in, and for us and our personalities, it works. I will say boundaries are important. But I will say that I have learned that, and she has learned, that both of us have boundaries that aren't necessarily static. And so I would say it's a little bit more like counterbalancing. And so there's moments where we start tipping over in one direction, and then we have to kind of autocorrect. So boundaries are a part of that. When you dip in and when you dip out. And patience is a part of that. So, sometimes you have to knowingly let the other person dip in and know that you will too. But then, there does come times where you have to make a line in the sand and create that boundary that you created. So for us, that's it. It's a constant dance. And I wish it was as easy as everything that we drew up on a set play, but we're just kind of going with the flow.
I've also noticed, though, that you have a nice emphasis on surgical as well as non-surgical. And can you just talk about your med spa? You gave it a name. You put some effort into it. What's the plan there?
I think that plastic surgery was very surgery focused for a long period of time. And I think technology has brought a lot to the field of plastic surgery and improved outcomes for patients. And in that space, non-surgical services, the injectables, skin treatments, lasers, fat reduction, have all blossomed in that ecosystem. And it's, I think successful people in aesthetics and in plastic surgery understand connection with patients, and not every patient wants surgery. And sometimes maybe they want surgery later. And so I think that plastic surgery, when I first was in my residency training, there would be a lot of debates with patients wanting something that was more lasting, maybe a more significant procedure with downtime, but a lasting effect, versus something that's kind of quick in and out, but doesn't give you the same quote unquote durability. And then at what point do you assign bang for the buck or value? And I think that was the debate. And I can't remember the last time that was a nonstop concern for my patients. Most of the time now it's about timing. Do I want to do both these things together? Do I want to phase into this over the next 5 years and then consider surgery, or maybe not at all? And so it's become part of the continuum for patients. And I like to tell patients and people that I talked about this, well, I think it used to be surgical and non-surgical, kind of either or.
Right.
And I think now it's better together. And so, my practice has 40 to 50% of its financial revenue now comes from non-surgical activities, and it used to be 5%.
Good for you. Nice.
Non-surgical, and that's just because patients have grown up with us, and then new patients are learning about us, and so we just have a larger funnel, and we collect people from 20 to 70, 20 to 80, and then slowly you start gathering more people in different compartments where maybe Botox alone and some skincare is what they want. Or maybe they're 70 and they really, really want a facelift. And so the growth of our practice and connection to patients has led to that. 80% of my patients are still moms,
Mm-hmm.
And to a certain extent, even more than that. Like, if you consider, grandmoms, but it's the moms of the moms that have come in and asked about facial stuff, and that's grown. And then, the kids that were younger on these moms that we took care of 8-10 years ago are now in college and wanting skincare. And so we've, grown with that. And now our non-surgical services have expanded to meet that. So within my office, we have basically a non-surgical arm. But I consider it just part of my aesthetic treatment for patients, kind of, the prejuvenation on the younger patients in their 20s, and then, maintenance and then rejuvenation. And then after rejuvenation, they stay on the maintenance train. And so that's allowed us to have a connection to patients. A term that used to float around, I don't hear very much anymore, was patients for life. And so we've embraced that concept in the office, and that's allowed us to think about what would we want for ourselves, our family members. And so, a perfect example of that is the Cyton laser. Everything we do is connected to skin. Everything I do had have a potential aging change on the skin or an incision area. And the flexibility of that platform to treat skin, take care of it, and treat incision lines has been a real game changer. And I feel like it's done something new and elevated for patients in my practice that I wouldn't be able to do just as a surgeon. So I think that those things have made it what it was. And then I've gotten involved with Orange Twist, which is another med spa separate as a different entity from my practice, but as a dedicated.
Why did you call it that? Is it a franchise or something?
Yeah, so Orange Twist, and one of my mentors, Dr. Stevens, and
I thought it was his. I thought, wait a second, Stevens calls his Orange.
Yeah, and Clint Carnell, who had been involved with Hydrofacial and other companies for years, came up with the concept of creating access to non-surgical services in a non-intimidating way. And I think we're now seeing that explode. I mean, I think that there's many different quote unquote chains of med spas, if you want to call them that, across the country. And Orange Twist is definitely, at the table in that space and in that discussion. And we're one of the newer entries in terms of, having been around for a few years. And then, COVID interrupted California as a state, maybe more as intensely as any place. And so there's 16 centers or so nationwide with Orange Twist, and 10 of them happen to be in LA and Orange County.
Right.
So I was fortunate to be early in on the idea of this med spa, where we would basically take these services where people would have high impact, minimal downtime, and be able to integrate things like Botox and Hydrofacial and non-surgical services into their lifestyle without having to go to a medical doctor's office. And so that's the concept and the premise. And it's been a lot of fun, and it creates a different space that is solely focused on all the things in the world that we can do that's non-surgical, that allows them to be treated quickly and kind of more in their neighborhood outside of the medical district.
Let me understand the business model of Orange Twist. Is it the economies of scale? You're just a much bigger buying power, so you're getting supplies for a lot less than if you were on your own? Or are they giving you also marketing plans? Are they branding you? Are they advertising for you? Like, what do you get out of that hanging around or being connected to Grant Stevens?
Well, I don't know that I look at it that way. I think that there's a huge area for growth in non-surgical services that exceeds the growth potential for surgical services. And then what are we going to do to tap into that growth potential? And you want to reduce friction. And so parking in a doctor's office that may have 15 stories and a parking deck and several layers to go through, and a waiting room of surgical and non-surgical patients for an 8-minute Botox appointment becomes a drag, becomes an absolute drag. And so the Orange Twist itself, just like any large company, I'm certain has purchasing power, has other things, but that's all behind the scenes. For me, it was a way to continue to grow and to stay on the leading edge of access to what patients were interested in, and be able to extend services and care to them, without creating that quote unquote drag of the doctor's office. It's the same reason that I think I eventually became motivated to build my own surgery center. So I think that had I never gotten involved with Orange Twist, I wouldn't have really expanded my horizons and thought about how I could change that part. I would have just accepted the fact that surgery happens at the surgery center and the officing happens at the office, and been very binary in that thinking. And so it became very appealing to me because it opened my eyes to something, again, that was very business centric, but about consumer understanding. And so our consumer growth, our access in the aesthetic space is going to have huge influence from the non-surgical world. And we want to reduce friction, and we want to make that easy for our clients. And then for my post-surgical clients, I want to make it easy for them too. So if I can put an orange twist that's, 3 minutes from their neighborhood and not 25 minutes into the medical district, why not? And why not expand that footprint and grow that business, learn from it, and be able to do more. And so I think that is what appealed to me about it.
So they're coaching you?
I don't know that it's going to, lead to some huge, great windfall. But for me, the ability to talk to people like Dr. Stevens and Clint Carnell and other medical directors that are involved, and then work with other nurse practitioners, PAs, and estheticians has enriched my experience as a leader for my practice. And so for me, it's the relationships. And I hope financially it does well.
Okay. Well, you forgot.
But that was the hook. And so that's kind of been
Well,
the
what
part
is
of it.
the hook? The part where you get to now, you have relationships with people who have been there, done that. So your learning curve is much less than had you had to do it on your own. Is that the point?
I think that there's a component to that.
Okay.
But no, it's about, any kind of thing, any kind of relationships. I think that, you look at the aesthetic society as a whole, and people do, I think, benefit from relational interaction with peers, in, having ability to kind of set aside different ways to reflect, think, both backward and forward, was what the appeal was. And certainly because of what we talked about, the explosion in consumer demand for non-surgical services outpaces that of surgery. That's where the opportunity is.
Right. I had Dr. Stevens on my podcast during COVID because it's the only time I can get a hold of the guy, when he like all of us were sitting still, that felt very helpful. And at that point, he had already had maybe 5 locations. And I'm so fascinated with the business model of that. But, we are running out of time. Let's keep going because I want to talk about your branding. Your last name is Camp. You're very good at using that with the happy campers, and you have the and then you have the bow tie babes. So
Yeah.
Tell me, what was that? What was behind that? And has that been helpful to have some of that differentiating branding for you?
Yeah, I think we're just like, well, who are we and how are we going to share that story? And so the camp just comes from, it's an easy way for people to remember who they are seeing and who they're interacting with, right? And so, and we want people, when they come see us for aesthetic surgery, non-surgical services, to be happy. We want to improve their quality of life. I don't think that, a tummy tuck or a facelift is going to necessarily make anyone live longer, but it might make those years much better. And we all want nice things in life. We all want things like clothing or our housing environments to be comfortable to us, and to be reflective of our internal style in some capacity. And aging impacts that. And so when I can make somebody happy, I tell people I have a couple of requirements. I want them to really look good. And so, and that's a barometer. And we have photography, and we have beauty standards, and we have, here's what's possible with surgery and what's not possible with surgery. All that's very much true, but there's an emotional component to that too. And that's part of what dictates success in aesthetic surgery. Is obviously you have to start with, the right patient. So you have to have a good patient candidate, and it has to be quality technical procedure. And then it has to hit a certain mark. It has to make them feel a certain way. So I tell patients, if they look good and they feel good, then they're going to be happy campers. And that one just stuck. And it was just an extension of my last name. It was just simple. It was right there in front of me. It was not meant to be complicated, but it was meant to be fun. And I think it's nice that you can associate that with the name of me, the surgeon, and the practice. And so it's stuck. And it's also one of those things that can become kind of like a club. So, you can become a happy camper. Anybody can become a happy camper. So that just kind of stood out. And we kind of went with it and embraced it. And I think that's just a philosophy that we approach our life and our practice with. And I think, the patients that we take care of that want us to take care of them, embrace that. And so we went with that. And then part of doing training in the Southeast is I became exposed to, different things like bow ties. And so moving from Texas to North Carolina, I was around a lot of folks that kind of had a Southern gentleman vibe to them, and I was kind of intrigued by it. And when you're, a resident, these short ties, they cost about half as much as a long tie, and they stayed kind of clean. So I'm going to try this. And so I tried it on and got made fun of a little bit. And I said, you know what, I'm just going to do it. And I rode with it through my residency. And when I started practice, I was one of the few people around wearing a bow tie. And so early in practice and when I do office hours, I like to, leave the impression with patients that it's an important event, that they're there to see us for their surgical treatments and needs. And I want them to feel like someone is treating it like a special event. And the bow tie sends that signal. It talks about preparedness. It talks about a level of elegance. If you think about going to a nice restaurant or a wedding, the bow tie is synonymous with something that I think I would like my practice to reflect, which is a level of elegance. And we feel like that's a good message and a good branding tool for us. And it's authentic. Just like camp is part of my name and the happy camper is part of it. The bow tie is part of our personal style. And then so I think when you blend all those two things together, that's when the staff, we're all women, banded together and just made themselves the bow tie babes. And it was very organic. They did it on their own. And they've kind of taken off with that and run with it. And it's been a hit.
Well, you used to have this great photo on your website. I think it was even on the homepage. And all of you were in your suit and bow tie.
Tuxedos?
Tuxedo, for heaven's sake. And then all the women were in black
evening gowns. Yeah.
And it was so cool. And it was on these stairs and you were all spaced out. And I thought, so elegant. And then I didn't see it. So I thought, why'd you take that down? I thought that was great differentiating for you. No,
I don't know that we've taken it down. I think it's probably just moved around in its cycles. So my wife's behind me. I don't know. Did we lose the tuxedo picture?
Well, it was so eye-catching.
She's doing an update.
Okay, yeah, because I thought it was just so different than what you normally see. So kudos.
Yeah, I'm glad you liked it. I didn't know what people would think, but we had fun with it, which is what counted.
Right. So when it comes to social media, would you say, what are your marketing channels for attracting patients? Is social media the way to go, or anything else working for you to get new patients?
No, I think it's a combination of factors. Social media was an early differentiator, I think, for me, and it allowed people a little bit of access into the daily activities of, what goes on in seeing patients, taking care of them. Some, better idea of a look behind the curtain of what surgery is like. So they see how patients respond, not just the surgical sites themselves and maybe a binder or a garment, but actually sometimes having a conversation with the patient, like as they wake up or so it added layers of understanding for patients so they could see the preoperative, the surgical side, and then the post-surgical result, where it used to be just like, I understand that before and after looks better, but the whole process is maybe very intimidating. So social media took down a lot of barriers, I think, for patients. And I think being young in practice, it gave them access to understand your ability without equating that to being too young or too old or experienced. You just see it in action, and it speaks for itself. Anyone can say whatever they want to say. Anyone can have an idea about what experience they think they want or what they think they want their doctor to look like. But ultimately, once they see something that matches what they're looking for, it resonates. And so that for us stuck. And I think we stayed active in other places, worked on Real Self and answered questions and loaded photography, and then built out a website with content. And there was no one specific magic bullet. And I'd say that as time has gone on, being consistent is most helpful. And then the other thing is, there's a mixture of things from my life on there. So social media is different than my website. The website is very focused on outcomes, and then the ins and outs of why a patient might want procedures, and then instructions, and so on and so forth. And then the social media channel is a reflection of everything. And so I think patients like to know something about you. I think it takes some separation away, and it makes the whole idea about talking to a physician less intimidating. And I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're a guy talking to a guy, man to man, or if you're a lady talking to another lady. To meet someone early on and then talk about a physical feature, whether it be your nose, your body, or something like that. There's something about that that's not everyday experience.
So
social media can take that away and say, well, here's somebody that, is like me. They have kids, they go on trips, they look tired on the weekends sometimes. You can see us doing family photos. So just like anybody else, I have things that matter to me. I have things that I have to deal with. And it I think, makes that connection with patients more understandable. Where it used to be, white coats, sterile, doctor-patient, very, very harsh boundaries. I think you have to be careful about blurring lines. But authenticity, I think, is a word that comes up a lot with social media channels. And so I think you don't have to have a ton of followers or anything else like that. I think be yourself. If you do that and you're consistently there, you'll have a base of patients that's comfortable with you. And I think that can be great, a great resource. And then the website has probably been the most consistent thing. It's the tried and true. But I will tell you that it's taken us years to understand where patients come from exactly. But our volume of patient traffic and data still tracks highest through our website. And that's our greatest volume of information on procedural information to educate patients, and then illustrative information on before and afters. So they still spend time there, and it still ends up being the destination point from which they tell us they come to us. But Real Self is important. Google reviews are important. Being in the community is important. Being on social media is important. And so I think there is an ecosystem component to that. It's a new layer of work that didn't used to exist. And I think anyone would admit that there's times when you need to give yourself a break. Even my colleagues who are extremely active on social media, when we have separate conversations, talk about the need every once in a while to unplug and take a break here and there. And you'll even see them announce it on their social media channel because they're so active and so accessible that when they do take a break like that, if you don't put people on notice, it creates this strange panic. So it's another variable to manage, but at the same time, I think it's a new reality. So and I'm sure that you have to deal with social media as well. I mean, I'm sure it's impacted what you do on a daily basis, hasn't it?
Yeah. Well, I use my dog. I saw your dog. He's adorable. And you've got the kids. And it just shows that you're a well-rounded person. People want to see, who are you? And it really shows. So you're doing a good blend of educating as a surgeon, but as a husband, a father, a dog lover. So you're hitting lots of interest points that we consumer cosmetic patients like to hear. Yeah.
Well, sure.
Yeah. So my last question would be, tell us something that we don't know about you.
Oh, wow. I think a fair number of people probably wouldn't expect Spanish to be my first language.
Are you fluent? Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah, so my mom's Colombian, and my last name's Camp because my dad's got the most kind of British type background from South Carolina. So he's from South Carolina, but my mom's from South America. So it's an interesting kind of little background, and it was really fun kind of growing up with those different kind of cultural perspectives. But that's all I've ever known. And I think that surprises people because they expect, something different when they see the last name Camp. But that's true. It's a very much part of who I am. I have a strong Latin heritage, but, also my dad's side of the family has not a single Latin bone in their body that I can tell. And so, I got to learn a little bit of language from my mother, but unfortunately, all my bad dancing comes from my dad.
I saw you dancing on TikTok. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. The other thing I think is that, I've been a lifelong Cubs fan because I was born in Chicago.
Me too.
And so, go Cubs.
Yeah, I still have my Cubs hat, and people out here, but it says C because my name is Catherine, so I go with that, but it's really Cubs. Yeah, so.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, I thought we'd never see them win a World Series, and lo and behold, a few years ago they pulled that one out. So it was great.
The Chicago fans are ridiculously optimistic, and they'll hang in there forever until something good happens. Yeah. So
I've got a book at home called "Wait Till Next Year."
Yeah. That's so funny. All right. Well, thank you so much for being with me on Beauty in the Biz. It's been an absolute pleasure. And everybody, that's going to wrap it up for us this time. So if you've got any feedback for Dr. Camp, you can certainly head over to his website. It's campplasticsurgery.com. And if you've got any questions or comments for me, please leave them at CatherineMaley.com, or you can certainly DM me on Catherine Maley MBA. Thanks so much. We'll talk again soon.